Are we currently in a housing bubble? It's one of the most searched terms on Google at the moment. In today's video, I'm going to share 4 important charts with you that I believe explain why we've seen the crazy appreciation that we have and why it's likely to continue for another couple of years. I recently did a survey on my channel asking viewers what their biggest fear was when purchasing a home, and nearly 32% of viewers were worried about purchasing a home and the value going down because they have fears of what happened last time. There was also 32% of viewers that voted that said their biggest fear was being priced out of the market, not being able to find the right home while home values continue to appreciate. So in today's video, we're going to talk about both of these, help you understand what a housing bubble is and why we're likely not in one presently. Let's start by talking about what a housing bubble is. A housing bubble is created when you have a lack of supply, crazy buyer demand, kind of like right now, right? Where people are willing to pay crazy amounts for something because there's not a lot of it. Well, that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So that's a fear for a lot of people out there. But a bubble actually bursts when you see supply increase, demand decrease, which at this time we haven't seen either of those, right? Inventory levels are still super low. We're currently sitting at 2.6 months of supply nationwide. Here in Southern California, it's actually somewhere around the 2% level. So nationwide, inventory levels are still very, very low. At the same time, we have buyer demand. Now, buyer demand has diminished a little bit just because of, the time of the year, for one, in my belief, right? It's that summertime. People start to slow down their purchasing because the kids are getting back in school. Parents don't want to move them. And you're starting to head into the fall winter market, which is typically a slower time of year for home buyers. So how does this compare to last time? Well, last time we had nearly 12.5 months of supply. We had demand that diminished due to credit basically going away. And at the same time, we had a lot of loans out there that were being generated by subprime lenders with borrowers with low credit scores that actually didn't have jobs. And so when the market shifted, you had a huge amount of supply. You had people that couldn't purchase because, for one, they couldn't get loans. A lot of them couldn't get loans. You had loans adjusting during that time and values declining. And it just created this frenzy in the housing market, if you will. This time is entirely different, which is going to bring up my first chart of showing the number of originations back in 2006 for borrowers that had credit scores below 620 compared to the same credit scores with loans being generated in 2020. You can see the difference, right? Considerably more, $376 billion worth of loans in 2006 versus $74 billion in 2020. So you're probably asking, after looking at that, well, how does that prove that there's not a bubble? What happens when supply continues to increase, with all of these home builders out there building homes and people not buying them, right? Inventory is going to continue to rise. Well, you saw me talk earlier this year about Dr. Lawrence Yun, chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, basically saying that we're nearly 5.5, 6 million homes behind where we should be with regards to new construction. And you can see from this chart here what we've built in the last decade, around 6.5 million homes, versus what we built 4 decades prior to that. The 4 decades prior, we were averaging somewhere between 10 and 12 million homes per year. This last decade, we only averaged 6.5 million. Why is that a big deal? Because you have Americans becoming prime buying age, right? They're at a point where they have to move out of their parents' homes. A lot of them have lived there longer than generations prior. They've been able to save money. They have good paying jobs. And I'm talking about millennials, right? Millennials are reaching prime buying age, and they're at that point in their lives where they want to own property. And they have been the key driver of the housing market for the last year, year and a half. They're a good portion, over 30% of the home buyers during this time. And you can see from this chart that I'm posting here how many Americans under the age of 35 are actually homeowners, right? We're sitting below 40% currently. And a lot of these buyers, these millennials, these first-time home buyers are at that point in their life where they're ready to own property, and they are going to be the key driver of housing as we move forward. Now, I always have viewers ask, how are these buyers, these first-time home buyers, affording property? How are they able to purchase property at such high dollar amounts? One, it's because interest rates are considerably lower than they were last year, the year before, even 15 years ago or so during the last housing debacle. Right? Housing affordability is at its highest level at the moment, even with house prices going higher just because of where interest rates have gone. Now you can see from this chart here, we've been in a downward trend since about 1982 with regards to interest rates. At this time, I don't see any reason why that trend would break. Now, we know from the Fed coming out and talking about, the Fed funds rate and then, the mortgage-backed securities and pumping money into the market, that's not likely to really change until at least 2023, which means that you're going to have interest rates stay low. We know that supply isn't really going to go anywhere because home builders aren't able to build enough homes to actually supply the market. At the same time, you have boomers who are supposed to be the biggest share of homeowners selling their property over the last 10 years because they were aging out. They were going to move to retirement homes. They were going to downsize. Those boomers have actually stayed in place because, they're out looking at property, looking for single levels, a lot of them, and they're looking at downsizing. But when they do, it's as expensive to purchase something else, in some cases even more expensive to purchase something else versus just keeping what they have. So a lot of these boomers are continuing to age in place, which means that property isn't going to come to the market. And keep in mind, when those boomers do age out, when they do pass on, guess where their money gets passed on to? It gets passed on to their kids, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, and guess who their grandkids are? Those are the millennials that are currently in the market. Those ones where you're wondering how they're able to purchase property, or maybe that property gets passed down, from the boomers to their grandchildren, and their grandchildren end up with that property without it ever coming to the market. So you've got all of these different dynamics playing into the market, which is going to keep the market continuing to move sideways to up over the next couple of years. I know I'm going to have some people out there say, well, what happens when forbearance ends? What happens when evictions end? At the end of the day, what you have to understand is that the servicers, the lenders out there at the moment are working with homeowners exiting forbearance. They have, they have created 40-year mortgages. They have, done things like reduce the principal balance by 25%, add that to a silent second along with any missed payments with no interest and nothing to be paid until that loan is refinanced or sold at some point in the future. So they're really working with people to keep them in their homes, which is going to keep that inventory off the market. So if you're somebody wondering what happens when all the supply hits the market, it's not going to happen, at least anytime in the near future. Now, you are going to have homes come to the market. You are going to have, things cool down as we head into the slower months of the year, the winter market. And the media, a lot of people are going to portray it as a slowdown in the housing market. But the reality is it's seasonal. This is typically what happens this time of year. And I believe that as you move, towards the end of the year, beginning of next year, you're going to see home buying continue to pick up because not much is going to change in the housing market over the next 6 months to a year. In addition to our, first-time home buyers making up nearly 30% of the market, you also have individual investors, second home buyers, making up about 15% of the market. In addition to that, you have 23% of sales in the month of June being cash sales. How are these people paying cash? Well, some people have enough equity in their property that they've either cashed out, taken that cash and gone and purchased something. Maybe they've sold a property, they're taking that cash and going to buy something outright. In addition, you have these hedge funds, right? You've heard about the Blackstones, the BlackRocks, buying property. And why are they doing that? Because they can guarantee a yield for their investors, right? They can go out, buy a home cash. They can hedge themselves against inflation, right? It's a non-risky investment because it's not an equity. It's not changing value every single day, so to speak. So they can buy a fixed asset, turn around and rent it and guarantee a yield for their investors. At the same time, they're likely to gain appreciation during that time, which is going to only add to that yield for their client. So if you've got billions of dollars coming into the market from hedge funds, the smart money out there, if you will, and you've got millennials looking to become, homeowners during this period of time, you've got a low amount of supply, you've got cheap money being driven by low interest rates, and you've got demand that's not likely to go anywhere because everyone wants to be a homeowner, if you will, and get the appreciation over the long term, which to me means that you have a strong housing market. You don't have a housing bubble. Yes, prices might be inflated by some standards. They're going above where we think they are worth in some cases, where you think they're worth in some cases. But when you're continuing to get multiple offers on property, people going above the asking price in many cases, because that's what I'm seeing writing offers for clients, that to me is not a bubble. That to me is sheer demand due to a lack of supply. And until you see something change, you're going to continue to see house prices move sideways to up. So a lot of you out there are going to say, hey, Jeb's just a real estate agent. He's just pumping the market. He just wants you to buy a house so he has a job. Not true. I'm going to have a job regardless of whether you buy a house or not. So it's not that. I'm truly trying to educate you and help guide you through that process. So if you found any value in this content at all, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up. And also, if you're wondering whether you should buy now or wait, one of those really common questions out there, check this video out here. But for now, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I appreciate the support. Hope to see you again soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.